I think of acupuncture as the original longevity tool. That's what the medicine has done for thousands of years. It's a system of healthcare, not of sick care. By sticking to our roots, like we know that what we do is regulate the nervous system and balance hormones and, amazing that they're buzzing now, but that is actually authentically what the medicine does and has done for thousands of years.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Michelle Larivee, founder and CEO of Within. In this episode, we talk about modernizing acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. Michelle shares her personal healing journey and the decision to launch a vertically integrated studio model and the company's plans to expand nationally with an omnichannel brand. Plus, we discuss acupuncture as an original longevity tool, making ancient medicine accessible to modern consumers, and why Healthspan, not self-care, is the future of wellness. Let's get into it. The Fitt Insider Podcast is presented by EGYM. EGYM's smart fitness ecosystem is transforming healthcare through exercise. Combining strength equipment with AI-powered software and corporate wellness platform WellPass, it's leading the shift to proactive, preventative health. Learn more about EGYM's intelligent workout solutions at egym.com. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, excited to chat. Lots to get into. And right off the top, maybe the best thing is, could you just introduce yourself, tell us about Within, and then we will go from there.
I'm Michelle Larivee, founder and CEO of Within, and we are on a mission to make acupuncture and healing modalities rooted in traditional Chinese medicine as accessible as possible. I was inspired to start the brand through my own personal healing journey. And today we have 5, soon to be 6 studios in New York, as well as a complete set of at-home products and related to acupuncture and Chinese medicine.
Yeah, kind of offline as we were chatting, I'd asked, when you started, you said 2019, and thinking about these, whether it's acupuncture or traditional Chinese medicine, things that have been around for centuries, what was your kind of thought in terms of modernizing this, scaling it, and like where that intersects with how people think about wellness today?
In terms of, maybe it helps just to share a little bit of my story, which is kind of how it's connected. So I got started with acupuncture almost 10 years ago at this point, following a ski accident where I had chronic pain from dislocated vertebrae in my neck and my back, and tried everything from chiropractic to physical therapy, shots and injections, and nothing really fully took care of the issue until my doctor recommended acupuncture and found that the pain relief was instant. I was able to stop taking painkillers and muscle relaxers finally. And, that was obviously really huge, not having to do any of that. And, kind of from there, I was able to realize that I was sleeping better. I was less stressed. I was getting sick less often. And all of a sudden I was in this whole world kind of organically of preventative healthcare and feeling super empowered about my own personal health. As someone always been focused more on fitness and nutrition, this opened my eyes to like a whole new level of what it means to be thinking about mental health connected with physical health and to be thinking about longevity, and very different and very empowering. And then from there, I actually had fertility challenges, and acupuncture helped me naturally get pregnant. So completely life-changing. And he became a huge advocate, started telling all my friends and colleagues, husband, etc., about the different benefits, how it works, and all of those things, but realized pretty quickly that while there actually was a ton of interest and excitement around a natural preventative solution that's been around for thousands of years, there's no easy way for people to get started. Where do I go? How do I know it's going to work? How do I choose a practitioner? Barriers in terms of cost, environment. So kind of lots of different things stacked against a consumer who, in 2019 has a pretty clear view of what they want and expect from an experience. And so to me, I was kind of like scratching my head. I'm like, how is this medicine that's been around for thousands of years, because it's so time tested, and now there's like incredible data and science that supports what we've known for thousands of years, why is it so hard for someone to access it? And so for me, that's, kind of what Within is all about, is how do we take this medicine? And I like to say accessibility in every sense of the word. And there's there's a huge opportunity that's out there because I think there's, and we can talk about this in more depth if it's helpful, but there's, I think, a ton of myths about acupuncture. There's a lot of kind of, lack of understanding in terms of the benefits. I think a lot of people are familiar with pain and fertility, but don't necessarily know about digestive health and system regulation and insomnia and sleep disorders. And, kind of the list can go on and on. And so that's what we're all about, is really closing that gap in terms of education and then creating a model where people can go and feel comfortable and safe.
As you were even describing it, as I first tried acupuncture because it was something like, whenever you looked into, okay, what, of course, there's like a subset of people that are, and this is even years ago, kind of like pre you within you got started, but a group of people were doing it. They're into like kind of functional, natural medicine, all those things. You, kind of entertain it. There's not a ton of information about it. It wasn't clear. But the one thing, and I think this is probably common among a lot of people who are maybe like me, it's like played competitive sports, was very like driven type A. And it's like, what is pretty much every elite athlete or large
Yep.
numbers of elite athletes doing? It's like they're doing acupuncture, they're doing cupping, they're doing like X, Y, like all of these things down the list. And it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? Like where can I find somebody that does that? And it basically was like a referral, a friend of a friend, that they do it for one of the guys on the team. Like, maybe I could introduce you and they could like come to your house. You could go. And so it was like, and still fast forward, it's pretty much like there's still a number of hoops you have to jump through. So to your point, whether it's access or education or dispelling some of these kind of myths about it, how did you even start to chip away at that? And like, how much has that changed in the years that you have been working at it? Like, do you find that it's still some of those kind of like same hurdles and misconceptions, or like, have you been able to make progress like towards this accessibility?
I think we've made a ton of progress, especially in New York, where our physical locations are today, which is like really, really rewarding to see. We One of the things I'm most proud of is that actually 60% of our customers have never ever tried acupuncture once ever before. And so the fact that we're able to open up that service for such a huge population of people who are never able to find a place to try it. And then I'd say, even the other 40%, like a large population of that would say, I did it once or twice, but I couldn't really commit, or, it was only because I had like this one specific issue, but it wasn't really going to be like a lifestyle, which is, what we're really encouraging, because that's where you get the long-term benefits, is through consistency. It's, unique to the medicine, so I think we're starting to see like a lot of exciting signals, just in terms of, we've seen search volume go up from Google with like the work that we're doing and the awareness that we're raising. But I do think that, that needs to happen at a national level. And that's ultimately what our goal is to scale outside of New York and get to other markets. So I think there are, kind of a number of barriers, but I do, we're seeing awareness, we're seeing understanding. And kind of like you said already, I think it does really come down to education. And, I think of it as like peeling back the layers of the onion, because I think there's a lot of different things. So it could be something as basic as, oh my gosh, needles. Like, I'm afraid of needles. Totally valid. People have been afraid of needles forever because of getting vaccinated and things like that. But, acupuncture needles are gentle like cat whiskers, and it's a totally relaxing experience. Most people fall asleep while they're on the table. So, all of that combined with the history and the culture, which we take really seriously out within, in terms of really sharing the ancient system of beliefs that we practice, as well as the science that's coming out as well. Because I think that that's kind of a really important linchpin in terms of making modality mainstream. And it's something that I saw and I studied really closely. Like, and the way I see it is that yoga was 15 years ahead of where we are with acupuncture, and meditation was 5 to 10 years ahead of us, and all followed very similar journeys in terms of being ancient practices that came to the US and were maybe more of a niche market, kind of what you're describing. But then how did they become mainstream? It was celebrities and athletes, kind of to your point, like became aware. had access because of who they were. CEOs started to, understand some of the performance benefits. And then what started to really happen was the scientific education that started to explain what we've known for thousands of years in terms that are, critical to modern consumers that are seeking, data and information. And that's, the next kind of phase of that is brands that became the access point that understood, okay, we have to find a way to then take all of this and make it accessible to consumers. So I say, like, Headspace did that for meditation, Core Power Yoga did that for yoga, and Within is really the access point for acupuncture and Chinese medicine.
100%. And I was pretty much going to set up that same kind of framework. You know it inside and out. I'm sure just seeing how this has evolved. Yoga is like the quintessential example. Of course, meditation, same thing. And now there's even been this breakthrough kind of with sauna and bathhouses, cold plunge. Okay, now you have a number of studios that are popping up everywhere. You red light therapy, which is some integrated into, some of those types of bathhouses, but also standalone studios. So this paradigm that you see it moving from fringe to kind of elite, it's getting called, whether it's woo woo or it's too expensive, it's only for celebrities. And then it starts to move into the mainstream and become accessible in a way where it just kind of becomes commonplace, such that there's a core power and people are wearing wearing Lululemon that have never done yoga in their lives. It's so mainstream. And I do want to talk about the kind of physical expansion, what that looks like and how you're thinking about it. But just in terms of the maybe product standpoint, and now in terms of the in-studio experience versus supplements versus at home digital, like what does the kind of full offering look like and how do you maybe like prioritize those?
Yeah, totally. So I would say, the core of our business is our acupuncture studios, and we're super focused on scaling the studios and, really building best in class unit economics at a studio level. One of the things that's really incredible about having a four-wall business at the core of an omnichannel business is that we have a team of over 65 doctors of acupuncture that are part of our team and help design our products and do the education and can, be on expert panels and help spread awareness. So I think that's a really important part of us. And, we kind of never lose sight of the importance of our practitioners who are the heart and soul of what we do at Within. And then I'd say kind of two things. So one is we really have this mission of accessibility, and we know that scaling a four-wall model is faster and harder than a products business. And so with our products, we're able to reach people nationally and even already globally while having 5 studios. So that's really important. And I'd say kind of the other aspect that's just an underlying part of our business model is that in Chinese medicine, you don't just get like one acupuncture session once or two, and then you're done. If you're really looking to optimize your health and your results, you're doing it once a week, twice a month, but then every day you're actually adopting the lifestyle. And there's a lot of things that are part of the Chinese medicine lifestyle, whether that's supplements, which we think of as part of the nutritional guidelines, acupressure points and routines that you can do at home, meditations, movement, so different things like that, right? And so all of that kind of led us to be building an omni-channel business from day one. But that being said, at least at this phase that we're in, and I'd say for the next couple years, like we're really focusing on the studios as the core.
Perfect. And then thinking about what's kind of fueling the growth on that side of the business now, physical expansion, looking the maybe saturating somewhere like New York versus expanding to other cities, doing that as company owned versus franchising. Like, what does that growth look like?
Yeah. I mean, these are all like board level discussions that we're having actively right now and things that we're thinking about. And, fortunately, there's roadmaps of brands that have done it both different ways. I think it's pretty clear for right now, we're really focusing on the New York market and making sure that we have a really deep and loyal and engaged customer base there that I think will then give us a bigger halo effect. So I'd say, even like several studios ago, we were kind of already debating, like, should we go to Miami? Should we go to California? Like, I literally get real estate emails in my inbox from cities all over the country every single day. And for me, it actually was really important to have not only from an economies of scale and just, best practice in business, making sure that we had that within, our first market. I think it was also about the brand and the understanding and the education. And, there's pros and cons to starting in New York, right? It's super expensive, business regulation and healthcare regulation is challenging, but there's also a lot of benefits in terms of how big of a market is, how dense of a market is, how many studios you can actually stand up before you actually have to look outside. And it puts a lot of operational strain, of course, when you're expanding outside of New York. So I'd say for the next year, we're focused on New York. And then 2027, we're already looking at, a national strategy and kind of how we're staggering that. And definitely exploring, the franchise versus corporate owned discussion as well. So more to come.
This episode of the Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM makes some of the most innovative strength training machines on the market, but that's only one part of their integrated ecosystem. With connected fitness equipment, AI-powered gym software, and a comprehensive corporate wellness offering, it's forging the future of preventative health. Partnering with companies worldwide, EGYM's WellPass program improves employee health by expanding access to premier fitness and health facilities. Upgrading gym floors, EGYM equips every operator with smart equipment and AI tools to create hyper-personalized training plans for every exerciser. Putting it all together, they're transforming healthcare through exercise. Experience the power of EGYM's ecosystem at egym.com. All of these different kind of, whether it's self-care or just recovery practices, like I think of so many times where I went to the chiropractor and was like, oh, and like in this little side corner you can get a massage, or I went to like a fitness whatever, like kind of high end, kind of call it like a performance club, and it's like, oh, and over here you can get all of these things, chiropractic adjustments separately. It's like, and then now fast forward, all of those things are legitimate, scalable, multiple players in that category operating across cities all across the country on their own. Going from that, making that jump from, call it what you said, 5 or 6 to what's the next milestone, 15, 20 plus. Have you started to identify like what are the biggest kind of operational challenges and saying, okay, this is how we get it dialed to the point where we're able to scale, and if you choose to go into that kind of franchising model, you can, but if not, it's like the path to that national brand becomes like very clear.
As we're always like very clear on what our bigger vision is, right? Which is to make each incremental studio successful and then to be scaling kind of beyond there. But I'd say like for me, it's always started even from like our very first studio was keeping in mind that, we're opening 1, but we very quickly within the next year want to be at 3. So, I think kind of hiring ahead of the game a little bit. Like I've seen the movie too, where, if you're building 2 studios and you're like hiring for 20 or 50, like that's too much. Right. So for me, it's always kind of like an incremental 3 to 5 ahead, at least where we are now. I think it, kind of the planning comes from there. And I'd say, one of the things that has been kind of like a core belief for myself since starting within is that I'm very aware that this is the first time that anybody's done this in the acupuncture industry, A, and then B, that, me personally, like my background is absolutely not as a brick and mortar operator. And so what I've tried to do is build a cap table and a network of advisors very strategically with people who are ahead of me and who have done what I'm hoping to do. And kind of to your point, there's like parallel models in different industries, right? And so I look at models that I really admire. So, for example, the founders of SoulCycle and Sweetgreen and Heyday, SLT, have all been a part of the Within journey, and that's been incredibly helpful. Also, Core Power Yoga as well. So, I think that kind of I always look to them when I'm thinking about planning ahead, and I'm kind of always planning not just 6 months or a year ahead, but thinking 12 to 24 months ahead.
Thinking about that growth one thing now, it's like there is the traditional Chinese medicine, and you mentioned like the lifestyle and everything that comes with that, and certainly that creating an opportunity to have this omni-channel, but really integrated kind of with the consumer as their wellness journey, their acupuncture journey evolves. At the same time, there's a number of, call it, consumer trends that we're kind of talking about these too, from the bathhouses to self-care to, XYZ. How much like does that impact the roadmap at this point, whether it's like stress management or longevity or hormonal health or immune support? You mentioned fertility. Is Do those play a bigger, smaller role based on like maybe what's top of mind and trending with people right now, or is it more just rooted in both the practice itself and then focusing on scaling the physical locations versus, you know, what may or may not be top of mind, call it, for consumers in this moment?
I think it's maybe a little bit of both, to be honest. So, like, I think of acupuncture as the original longevity tool. That's what the medicine has done for thousands of years. It's a system of healthcare, not of sick care, which we have here in this country. And so, I think just by sticking to our roots, like we know that what we do is regulate the nervous system and balance hormones and, amazing that they're buzzing now, but that is actually authentically what the medicine does and has done for thousands of years. So I think it's trying to make that connection, because I don't think when people think hormone balance or longevity, acupuncture is probably not the first thing that they're thinking of, just, kind of organically. And so I think our goal is to raise awareness. And I don't think it's like from a short-term perspective either, right? So I think some of these things that we're talking about aren't trends that are going to go away either, in terms of sleep as like a core driver of longevity or hormone health or anything like that. So I actually think it's more like the market is evolving in a positive way to help us connect what we do to what consumers are seeking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I actually, and that's why sometimes like trend is the wrong word, because that suggests that it's like here and then it's gone. It's like a flash in the pan, when it's like more a secular shift, like just fundamentally, like this is, to your point, it's really like we just have to kind of speak that language. It's like now people are seeing it this way, they're behaving this way. It's like we already do that. So it's like, how do we align what they're thinking and doing with like our service, and make sure that when they think of this thing, they think of us?
I would say out of all those words, my favorite that's trending, but again, not a trend, I think is like the focus on health span, because I love that it's like health, like at the core, versus to your point, like wellness or self care, or like, some of those other things. And just focusing or extending your health span, everything else kind of falls, because then you have better mobility and higher quality of life and more joy and happiness and, purpose. And I think all of that is, if we want to rebrand or find a word to focus on, that's my favorite.
One other thing I wanted to chat about is, you mentioned this from like a unit economics, of course it has to make sense from like a business standpoint, but then there's also the accessibility, and also the like kind of medical legitimacy that goes with it. You're marrying like a couple things that let's say a soul cycle or core power yoga doesn't have to worry about, right? From like the fitness lens. So whether it's pricing, whether it's, how you're hiring the folks to deliver the acupuncture, and then also on the scaling the physical locations, how are you making the kind of unit economics work?
I mean, that's a great question, something that we're thinking about all the time. I think what we really balance at within, because I'd say our price point is kind of like a sweet spot, like of value and accessibility. And that is a really important part, right? And so we do it in a few ways. We have a membership model, which, we're very familiar with in the industry, but having that kind of recurring revenue and consistency is like such a win-win for the consumer and for, from their health results. If you're coming regularly, you're going to feel better. Also, just, from a business perspective, helps us have more stable revenue and things like that. And then we just find that our members have much higher LTVs. They're, the ones that are evangelists out on the street, bringing all their friends in, like kind of to your point earlier, that is definitely still the number one way that people hear about acupuncture and feel comfortable going is through referral. And then, we really balance the experience, I would say, with a higher volume of clients that are able to come through our doors on a given day. So making sure that we have enough capacity to see a higher number of clients than is typical in kind of an individual private practice. It's a sweet spot in between, some of those super affordable models of acupuncture, where I'd say the focus is less on experience and more just on getting people in the door. And then, private practitioner will see a couple clients a day. So we're kind of in between. I feel like it's that sweet spot that really enables us to be successful. We're super disciplined about rent deals that we sign because that's a huge cost for the business. And so, I think we have not signed a deal that I regret, knock on wood. So, that's been a really big focus of me as a large cost driver. So, very lots of different metrics that we focus on. And I think staying focused and disciplined is important.
And then as we get towards the end of the conversation, it's still kind of relatively early in the new year. Folks are thinking about, hey, what's top priority Q1 or maybe first half of the year or even 2026? Like, what are you thinking about and talking about with the team? And whether it's things that you have coming down the pipeline that you're excited about or things that you're kind of looking at like, hey, this is what we're really focused on executing right now. Like, what's kind of top of mind for you?
Yeah. Well, we have 2 studio openings slated in New York in the next couple months. So that is definitely top of mind for us is that. And then kind of planning for future studio openings. We have had some exciting wins from a product distribution standpoint in the last few months that we're looking to, kind of continue to build out. We just launched in Ulta. We recently partnered with Canyon Ranch. And so both of those have been really exciting and synergistic. And, I think one of the things we actually haven't talked about that we've seen a lot of is related to Canyon Ranch is this big convergence of it's not just about kind of like compartmentalizing your wellness or health activities. It's like, how is that authenticated into every part of your day, whether that's at work, whether that's on vacation. And so we're seeing a ton of convergence within the travel industry. And so partnering with a number of different hospitality brands, which is really exciting. So thinking about that and then also thinking about corporate wellness. So we've had just like a ton of kind of inbound requests for on-site wellness services or corporate memberships and things like that. So finding ways to kind of extend beyond just our 4 walls.
Yeah, it's super smart. There's been a number of examples of folks that have executed really well around how do we kind of bolt on or integrate longevity services to maybe the hospitality and travel or something like social wellness clubs or programming. The same thing is, I know it's kind of still early, you mentioned, but is that something you would see where it's, hey, let's co-locate or integrate within studio here? Or is it more so just the kind of like programming products as an extension of what you're doing in the physical locations?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a co-location perspective, we're always thinking about co-tenancy in our own locations. And it's like amazing because you mentioned Mao Detox, but we were just talking about how their New York locations are right next to all of our New York locations. And so as we're expanding, we're kind of like inherently thinking about it, even if we're not in like the same 4 wall building, we're thinking about co-tenancy because there are so many synergies and we want to make it easy for people to kind of get all of their wellness services. And, we've explored a number of different models. We had a pop-up inside of a kind of like a wellness food court during COVID, just, as another way of expansion and had some great learnings from that. And so, I think at the stage that we're at, it's worth testing a lot of different options. Obviously, the idea of some capital light expansion opportunities is attractive to any 4 wall founder. I don't think that changes the strategy that we'll have. Our continue to open our own locations. But I do think it's interesting in terms of, can we scale faster? Can we, get in different markets sooner and things like that? So definitely very open to different partnerships and things like that. Particularly, I think when you're, I think one of the issues in the healthcare space, kind of the more traditional healthcare space today, is that doctors don't talk to each other and practitioners don't talk to each other. And so I think there's huge opportunity there. We love working with functional medicine doctors and having our practitioners communicate. We have great relationships with some of the top fertility doctors in New York, and our practitioners communicate really directly with them. So I think whatever we can do to kind of lower those barriers would make a lot of sense. What that looks like in practice is open for exploration and development.
Definitely. And whether it's folks that want to come to a studio, try acupuncture, partnerships, products, where would you point people to learn more? Anything you want us to kind of check out?
Yeah, 100%. We would love to welcome anyone who's acu-curious into one of our studios in New York, or to try some of our products like our acupressure mat, which is kind of a similar experience to getting acupuncture itself, ear seeds, which is an acupressure tool that have been really trending. We have our own body cupping kits, but we have a special discount for Fitt Insider listeners. That's Fitt Insider 25, which I know will be in the show description. And then, if you're interested in a corporate partnership or a travel and hospitality partnership, or are an investor in the space that is passionate about acupuncture and longevity, has experience with four-wall, would love to connect, super active on LinkedIn.
Perfect. We will make sure, like you said, everything's easy to find in the show notes. Encourage folks to check you out in person or reach out if they're interested. But super grateful for the time today. Really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Joe. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you got value from the conversation, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It's a massive help. And if you want more content like this, including news and insights on the latest industry developments, subscribe to the Fitt Insider newsletter at insider.fitt.co. And one more thing, you can learn more about our recruiting and consulting services at fitt.co. That's FITT.co. I'll see you here next week.